Thank you, and thank you all so much for being here today. I'm really glad to be settled in and to have the opportunity to practice with you. So thanks for joining. Thanks for prioritizing your practice on this day. I'd like to begin with a seated meditation. So come into any position that works for you. Allow yourself to be comfortable, please. If you're in a chair, allow your feet to be grounded on the floor. No matter how you're sitting, please take a moment to allow the spine to be long, free, and open. Just allow the attention to come to the breath. Pause to acknowledge that even if it felt very easeful and simple to join this period of practice, doing so is a recognition that you hear the call, the heart's call for stillness, stillness of being. Just allow this next half an hour to be an opportunity to rest in that stillness. For this meditation, if you usually focus on a specific concentration practice, counting the breath or attending to a mantra even, for this meditation, allow the attention to simply rest in awareness, in being. So for this meditation, releasing our temptation to do anything. Think of it instead like simmering in stillness. Visualize it instead as a simmering in stillness. So for today's meditation, I do this for a specific reason. I'm inviting a releasing of a tendency to be vigilant. Again, just for today, if this feels new, just for this experience. So a softening of that tendency to discipline the mind. Instead, a simple resting. Just allowing the mind to rest in the heart of awareness. Like bathing in your own beingness. If you imagine the ocean, visualize resting somewhere deep within it. So if you're present to a lot of activity in the thinking mind, just allow that activity to be noticed as surface water activity. And then let the attention sink. So rather than the attention attending to what's on the surface of the sea, just letting it sink and rest. In the depths. resting in the refuge of our own being. Notice how all the structures of the conditioned mind arise out of this place of stillness, the depths of this sea, but in a sense can't touch the depths of our own being, the depths of this stillness, not stillness as opposed to non-stillness, but the stillness of being ever present. So notice how irrelevant right and wrong is, for example. As we rest in presence in this way. This stillness of being untarnishable, unstainable. Just resting and being aware of being aware. Do you find yourself planning or doing, worrying or being active in the mind in any other way? Just consider for a moment that clenched hand, the image of a clenched hand that rests into openness, that releases into openness. It's the same way with our attention. We're releasing into the stillness, resting into the stillness. The doing was in the clenching, the doing was in the holding. Invite the cessation of that doing through your own willingness to rest as you are. Notice how in this approach, the mind is not something to fix or change or get rid of. Thoughts, not something to get rid of. Thoughts simply recognized as not you. Also not other than you, this stillness of being out of which thoughts arise and pass and dissolve. To receive the sweetness of having no assignment, no agenda, no created story that you could be doing this wrong. No believable evidence that there's anything wrong. Thank you. So grateful to rest with you in this way. I invite you to continue resting, simmering in your own being, as I turn my attention to some words that came shortly before this call. Some of you might have read these words in preparation for the call, but it's not necessary that you have. Today's theme being certainty in an uncertain world. So if you haven't read the words that were put forward about that, this is your opportunity to practice Zen mind, beginner's mind, resting in the uncertainty of what's to come. I wanted to specifically address the ways in which we get busy, stay busy, and how assumptions can be made regarding what it feels like to be out of balance. What I mean by that, I'll expand on now. So even when we've been practicing for years, it can be tempting to look for well-being elsewhere. We imagine this light at the end of the tunnel, that things will be different when I can meditate more often, or when life gives me more contemplative time. And I'd like to invite you now to fill in that blank. What is your story? If you aren't currently in a place in your life in which things feel particularly busy or full, when you are in that place, what is your particular story? Well, when I just finished this one project, or perhaps if you're not in a space, I happen to know there are people on this call who are retired. Perhaps if you're not in a state in which your life feels very busy with specific work projects, for example, perhaps there's a busyness of mind that you'd like to bring your attention to during this call. So when I reach this next state, then I'll be able to let go. So how would you fill in this blank? Just reflect on your experience of that for a moment, please. So I'm suggesting that such beliefs may come from the direct experience of the benefits of meditation practice. So if you're on this call, it's likely that you would be able to name, to recognize that after you've practiced on the meditation cushion, when you get up, you tend to feel different than you did before you sat. So it can be easy to then idealize that, to say, when I have the opportunity to spend more hours on the cushion, then I'll be able to have this experience. So these beliefs can reinforce a story that we need to reach the end of that tunnel, the tunnel being the state of our busyness, or just whatever is in this moment, really. That there's something wrong with being in the tunnel, that as soon as we're out of it, we'll have a different experience, and that the tunnel itself isn't sacred. So these beliefs that reinforce this idea that you need to be somewhere other than here with what is to experience peace. So consider for a moment that your presence on the cushion doesn't guarantee balance. Again, if you're on this call, you've probably had the experience before where you actually didn't have a different experience getting off the cushion than when you got onto the cushion. Your mind might have raced for the entire experience. You might have been identified with that conditioned process, whatever was arising, whatever was occurring. And you experience no particular shift. Consider that it's what you bring to the cushion that matters. And the same could be true of the fullness of our lives. So certainly, if I'm running a story that this shouldn't be this way, that I can't handle this, that there's a problem, my experience of being in that tunnel will dramatically shift. So it's what we bring to it. And of course, it's very important to acknowledge here that we are making all of this up. And that's, in a sense, where we're heading with today's theme. How do we create this illusory distinction that the tunnel, which appears real to us, is other than what's at the end of the tunnel, that light at the end of the tunnel? So what I'm interested in today is what shifts when we focus on creating a life of certainty. A life of certainty that whether you're in the darkest spot of a tunnel or whether you're in the blazing sunlight of an open meadow, your inner state doesn't change and your understanding of yourself doesn't change. And in this case, when I talk about your understanding of yourself, I mean yourself as the recognition of that stillness of being. You as the stillness of being. It's in your consciousness that spaciousness exists. So it's an illusion that the cushion brings peace and balance. It can, it's not a given. And it's an illusion to think that a person who's very busy cannot be in balance. They can, it's definitely not a given. Something we can all relate to. If this topic interested you at all, then you can relate to that deep assumption that we can't be in balance. There's way too much going on. There's too much work that would have to be done to create balance with all of what's being juggled. How do we know that? Is that actually true? I'm suggesting, of course, that what happens is that we forget that we are inherently the balance that we seek, that it's not situational. So if you embrace the darkness of the tunnel or the density of a forest with a thick canopy, so the busyness of our lives is just that, the density of a forest. You could think of it like a difference in energy, the density of energy. When we recognize it in that way, then our experience is just simply like walking through a dense forest. Consider that it's possible to find openness in these dark places, but that we can't have that experience when the attention is consumed by that narrative that something's wrong with where we are, with how we are, with who we are. Now, of course, if we're not paying attention to such process, then unconscious busyness can lead to all sorts of forms of suffering, physical and emotional, health problems, the loss of our ability to savor our experience or our capacity to find joy in life. So it's no wonder that in practice we can tend to demonize busyness or fullness. We can tend to say, clearly that's bad and wrong. But it's not necessary to do that. I'm interested today, and I'm inviting you to explore your own direct experience of what happens when we, instead of trying to manage the busyness or control the busyness, we focus on certainty. The certainty in understanding that life can be trusted. And I'm suggesting that that process actually rewires the brain. As we rest into the certainty of our experience that we can trust life, and that our experience of that place, the recognition of ourselves as that depth of the sea, space, spaciousness of being, is undisturbed by our activity, by the busyness. So our collective story might say, I'm oppressed by the demands of the world. The demands that keep me from my connection to source. But such stories stand in the way of this understanding, this certainty. The certainty of our experience of that which doesn't change. So that which is untarnished, unstainable, that certainty of experience can be relied on. All right. I would like to pause at this point and open it up. And before I do, first, just thank you so much for being here. And as Giles mentioned, we are sustained through Dana. And I'd love to invite you to consider that Dana is simply another way of talking about resting into the support of community. So we support you through offering, and we invite you to support us through offering. There's actually no difference, no matter what side of the cushion or the room or the screen you're on. So an invitation to use that donate button, please, at the bottom of your screen. It means a great deal to us, and hopefully a great deal to you, to feel yourself as part of this relationship of giving, of offering, of receiving, and of being. So that's my pitch. Thank you. I am happy to open it up now for some discussion. This, I will confess, is my favorite part of these calls. So please do call in. I, Giles, don't see any questions below this screen. So maybe you could write one just to make sure that it's been a little while since I have done this. So at any rate, I'd invite you to come on to the call in a live fashion so I can see you here and we can chat, discuss our practice or today's theme or not today's theme. And let's see. Okay, I just saw a question. Great, it is working. Let me see if I can just, bear with me folks, I'm trying to set it up. It's usually the case that I can scroll down and see the questions. And right now that is not working on my screen. So thank you for your patience. I can at least just click on the little number here. Okay, so Becky, thanks for writing in. You say the season of busyness is upon us. You are absolutely right. And I will be the first to be completely transparent and say that this call came out of my own paying attention to observations, being with my state of busyness. So yeah, it's the time. So the topic's timely, you say. Yes, thank you, it is. I always feel like I'm on a treadmill with all the holiday shopping. Yeah, well, first, thank you for reminding me that I haven't even gotten to that part of the busyness of my life. So curses. No, in all seriousness, it's amazing, isn't it? It's a time of year where our conditioned world really feeds this story that there's more we should be doing, that we need to be on this treadmill. And what I think is particularly tragic about the example that you start with here, Becky, is there's a story that if you aren't doing that, it must mean ... So fill in your blanks. You know, it might, in my conditioned system, get interpreted as, well, you must not really care about those that you should be buying presents for right now. So then you say, I always look forward to it being over, and that is my light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much. What a great example of, in a sense, the tragedy of this. Like, what a gift that this time of year is an invitation to focus on our relationship to others, our desire to make plans so that we can ensure we have time with family, for example. Or maybe you're in a situation where it's just, you know, that because you have some time off work, you're going to spend some time with good friends. Either way, just wanted to name that there's something deeply tragic to me about the fact that that sweetness gets co-opted, that the sweetness gets co-opted by our story that we need to kind of hunker down in that tunnel and just make it through, and then we'll be able to rest. There's so much I'm finding in my own life and practice that we miss along the way when we run that story. There's so much sweetness to what's actually occurring and arising that we miss. And we also miss the preciousness of the relationships that are richly in front of us right now. So just to use an actual example, the organization Peace in Schools, the nonprofit that that I'm the executive director for, you know, we're very fortunate to have a new administrative assistant coming on board. She's a real breath of fresh air to us. So that helps me to relieve some of my busyness, for example. But if I only saw her in relationship to how she can help me get out of this tunnel, I'd be missing the richness and the sweetness of having a new wonderful connection in my life, a new person to get to know, a new beautiful being that has come into our world, that cares about what we do, that is lit up by our vision and our mission in this world, and has much to offer in many realms. So I just want to point to that tragicness of how we, if we're identified with the conditioned mind, miss so much along the way. So Becky, thank you for naming your experience around that. Hopefully just naming it and recognizing it will support you and assist you in coming back to your experience of what you get told will be at the end of the tunnel, and yet is possible for us here and now. Thank you. I see that there is another question. Okay, Anushka. I love that name. Anushka, hello. I know that while I strive to get to the end of the tunnel, I also construct it feverishly when I start to see the glimmer of the light. How would you approach that fear of freedom? Thank you. Anushka, what a great question. I know that while I strive to get to the end of the tunnel, I also construct it feverishly when I start to see the glimmer of the light. How would you approach the fear of freedom? Well, in this case, Anushka, I would invite you to consider that fear is a constriction that we assume helps propel us into a different experience. But as you point to, it actually ensures that we stay in a locked state. So I just had this image of like a fire hose and how strong the water can be coming out of a fire hose, because there is some containment there. What I'm inviting in this session is for us to shift our relationship with this apparent tunnel by focusing on the certainty that we can trust life, that we can trust ourselves. So as we trust life, see if in this moment you can rest the attention in that place of trust, just for a moment. What would it be like, rather than feeling like you're inside this little straw or hose or tunnel, what would it be like to find the light there? And because I hear you recognizing that fear creates more of a constriction, rather than pushing through to the end due to that fear, or rather than the energetic pace quickening because of the fear, I'm actually inviting a deeper commitment to your practice of resting in stillness. So walk there with me now, if you would. You're there. The tunnel is beginning to form because there's the recognition of light. See if you can find the energetic light within the experience of resting in the darkness of a tunnel. So I'm actually suggesting that you not go anywhere, you not move away from the fear. The fear is like something on the surface of that water. In the metaphor I gave in the meditation, where there's the depth of the sea that is untouchable, the fear is up on the surface. So I'm inviting you to simply notice that, and rather than try to move around somehow on top of the surface of the water, I'm inviting you to rest the attention at the depths of the sea. To have a firm commitment in that is unshakable. That's where the certainty is. That's where the word certainty means something to me. It's the certainty of our own direct experience that is who we actually are, and that the fear is a creation that we need not fear, we need not try to move away from. Thank you, Anushka. I hope that was useful. There were a lot of metaphors in that, so you'll have to let me know if any of that landed for you. Drea, in these times of busyness, I'm heeding the advice not to seek grounding or refuge outside myself, but rather by going inward. So seasonally perfect. It is, isn't it? Yeah, especially somewhere like here. So I'm Sending love to you all from Portland, Oregon, and we're really feeling the shift in the light a lot here. Might you offer suggestions for daily practice you find powerful for tapping into our inner wisdom for grounding, while also honoring, not ignoring, external gifts, conditions? Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I too find that it can be extremely valuable. I'm going to close that out. Find that it can be extremely valuable. It's one of the reasons, actually, at the beginning of the call, I said that if you're practicing sitting meditation in a chair, to go ahead and sit in such a way that your feet could be grounded on the floor. So I invite the practice I'm about to offer, I invite everyone to participate in with. So come into a position that's comfortable to you. This is a really simple practice of grounding energetically. Grounding through the alignment of body, mind, energetic system in our relationship to the earth. So if you would, close your eyes or gaze down at a 45-degree angle for a moment and simply visualize that a very large gold spiral is above the crown of your head. See it there, very gently, very beautifully turning this golden spiral. Shimmering. And then as you breathe in, draw the golden spiral in through the crown of the head and visualize that this golden spiral was moving throughout your whole body, your whole energetic system, inhaling and then exhaling this golden spiral out and down into the earth. So repeat that, if you would, just for a moment. Inhaling, drawing the golden spiral through the crown of the head. Drawing it into the center of your being, and then exhaling, releasing this golden spiral out and down into the earth. This is an incredibly simple way to practice grounding. What I love about it is how quiet it is. You could do it anywhere at any time. You could do it while standing next to Becky doing your holiday shopping. You're in line, you pause, you practice grounding. Grounding is another way to talk about returning the attention to this place of certainty that I'm discussing today. The certainty of who we are, the certainty of our being, the certainty of presence, the certainty of the moment. And that when we rest in that recognition, well, with time, it becomes less and less compelling to leave, less and less believable that there's a good reason, any reason, to leave, no matter what's happening around us. And as you point out, Drea, it's when I'm in this place of presence that I am able to receive what is around me. It's a great point. When we're in that tunnel, there is a cutting off, an imagined cutting off from what's around us. In truth, we're never actually cut off, but that is the perception. Thank you, Drea, for writing in. Okay, let's see. Anna Maria, hello. Could you please expand on the concept of certainty of experience in the context of busyness? Do you mean trust that there is a reason for the busyness, or that we just can't see clearly because of our judgments around busyness? Well, Anna Maria, in this moment, I happen to know you, so because we've worked together before, you probably won't be surprised to hear that I think that that question, your question, do you mean to trust that there's a reason given that we just maybe are blocked from seeing because of our judgments around busyness? Because that question arose in you, I'm going to trust in this moment that there might be something for you to explore around that. So my question back to you is, how in your life do you forget to see the purpose, in a sense, behind the busyness because you're busy judging it? That's certainly one way we could talk about this. So in my own life, it might manifest as, I'm sort of making this up in the moment, but just to ground it, but it could manifest as, you know, forgetting the larger vision of why I said yes to so much that I said yes to, that now has me in a state where there's, if you looked at my calendar, there's little space. So I think that's what you're pointing at, and that's certainly one way we could talk about this today. What interests me about your point is your recognition of how the inner critic gets in the way. So the moment there's judgment about, for example, my calendar, is the very moment that not only do I not see the bigger picture, but it's the very moment that, as Dre pointed to, I'm missing anything that there might be to receive, whether it's a connection with another person or insight about my experience, or just simply, as I pointed to in the little talk, the joy of being able to savor life, the sweetness of being with what is now. So absolutely, the judgment becomes an intense block to that experience. There's a different type of certainty that I want to speak to with your question. Think of it like the certainty that you can trust your life. So again, just to ground it and make it concrete, it's like releasing into the certainty that I was being guided as there was opening to say yes to the things that this body mind said yes to, that makes the calendar look the way it looks. So a certainty, another way we could talk about this is to focus on the flip side, a certainty in that process rather than doubting of self/life. Notice how the moment we fall into self-doubt, a self appears. So in my own case, the experience of yes might have come from openness, an attunement with the next place to put my foot down based on the attunement with the flow of what is. The moment that process is questioned, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay. The moment that process is questioned, the moment we doubt ourselves, is the very moment that self, that illusory self, comes to the forefront of our experience. So I'm pointing out that trusting in having certainty in the experience of trusting life is one way of disidentifying from the attention feeding the narrative that the self is real. Disidentifying from the story that the self is real, this illusory sense of self that might have stories like, I've taken on too much, this isn't okay, there's a problem, I should have never, in the future, I should never. None of that is actually necessary. Identifying with that self is actually not necessary. It's a habit, it's a pattern, it's a conditioned pattern. What shifts? I invite everyone on this call to ask yourself, what shifts when I rest into trusting life? When I rest into the certainty that I can trust what is unfolding. That life is not giving more than can be handled. Thank you so much. I'm going to check the next question. And again, please don't be shy to come on and meet me face to face. The nice thing about that is it does allow for a back and forth. I'm happy to respond to questions in this way. Thank you for your engagement, and please don't be shy if you'd enjoy more of a back and forth. So Sharon, thank you for writing in. You say, my busyness is not external. I fidget, overthink, distract, etc., etc. I can't seem to remember that when I want to be home in awareness. Yeah, it's not a popular activity for the ego. It's not the ego that will remind us. So you might notice, Sharon, on the beginning of this call, I talked about taking a moment to acknowledge the heart's longing for stillness. So, you know, the Quakers talk about that still small voice within. So to recognize that longing for our own being as something arising out of our own being. So if you wait around for the ego, for the illusion of a separate self to want to be home in awareness, that might not be a fruitful waiting. I continue to try to be present throughout the day and in irregular formal practice, but I spend a lot of time avoiding awareness. Well, here's the best news of all, Sharon. What we're actually talking about in this call is the certainty of trusting life and the certainty of being able to rest in our own beingness. And in that, we're redefining who we see ourselves to be. So I am suggesting that you are that stillness of being, that you in fact are that awareness. So when you say, I try to be present, but I spend a lot of time avoiding awareness, the good news is you can't actually avoid awareness. You can fall into the narrative. You can believe the story that it's possible to avoid awareness, but you can't actually avoid it. You are awareness. It's primary, it's foundational, it's inherent. How can you move away from, how can you avoid yourself? It only appears that you can. So the good news is that you actually can't. You next say, is there any way to approach this other than plodding step at a time? And I love that you're writing this, Sharon, because I'm sure that many people on the call can relate. The plodding one step at a time is the formation of the tunnel, the created tunnel. Plodding one step at a time. Can you feel how it, just that image, creates the story that you're inside a tunnel and you need to take step by step by step to get out of the tunnel into awareness? What we're suggesting here is that the awareness is there all along, that you need not feed the story that you need to plod along in order to get to. It's completely unnecessary to do that. No plodding required. Rest in awareness now. Even if that constructed tunnel feels entirely real, here's my busyness, my fidgeting, my overthinking, my distraction. Even if that feels deeply real and true to you in this moment, simply allow it to be there and find the light of awareness through your direct experience of resting here and now, recognizing that that awareness is another way of talking about resting in yourself. You won't finally get to rest in yourself once you make it through this tunnel. The self that you're longing for is the self that you inherently are. The self that you're longing to be is the self that you inherently are. So simply notice that every time you catch the mind running a story that you need to plod along to get somewhere, that you're, as that story is being indulged, that the tunnel is being built. The tunnel is built so that you see yourself as someone who's plodding along through it. Then you say, that is, I know I'm doing what I can, but I always feel I'm missing something. Beautiful, Sharon. Again, your acknowledgement that you always feel that you are missing something is the acknowledgement that you are identified with a small sense of a separate self that is lacking. That's not a problem. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It is the experience that we can all relate to, that is the experience of suffering, however. I am other than, I am outside, I am trapped. Allow this moment to be an opportunity to redefine who you're referring to as you speak of this I am. How might you rest instead in a recognition of yourself as the stillness in the ocean, for example, in the metaphor that I gave before? Isn't that your most primary experience, that beingness, that awareness? Just invite you to practice resting there now. Thank you for writing in, Sharon. Scrolling, finding another question. Donna, what do you recommend if I truly accept this view and the people I have around me? I'm just going to make sure, Donna, I'm reading this correctly. I'm wondering, you say accept, but I'm wondering if you mean accept, ACC. Let's see, what do you recommend if I truly accept this view and the people I have around me resist the changes that begin to unfold? Yes, I'm trusting that you mean if I embrace this view, if I accept this view, and the people I have around me resist the changes that begin to unfold. Great question. Allow the people around you to be as they are, just as you're practicing, allowing yourself to be as you are. You need not be bothered by another person's process. Wouldn't that be so wonderful if the people around you just allowed you to be as you are? Wouldn't that be loving? Wouldn't that be kind? So what shifts when you allow the people around you to resist, for example? Of course, we get into such struggles because someone else is resisting and then I need to resist their resistance. So thank you for asking that good question. What do you recommend if others have an investment in the story that I'm trying to shed? Well, first, I want to acknowledge that can be very difficult. So I just want to say, I hear you, sister. It can be very, very difficult. And I do find that it's useful to immerse yourself in Sangha. I don't mean that I'm suggesting that you avoid someone who has an investment in your story per se, but to give the attention lovingly to seeking opportunities to be surrounded by those who recognize who you authentically are, who have no interest in you maintaining a story that creates suffering. I'm sure many people on this call are probably aware of the way in which the Buddha talked about Bodhi, Dharma, and Sangha. And Sangha, the community of people who practice together. So he talked about the three facets of one jewel. He didn't say that Sangha was third on that list, that Bodhi, the fundamental nature of truth, or Dharma, the teachings, he didn't say that that was first, that was second, and then Sangha is third. He said there are three facets of one jewel. And I do think it's incredibly important for us to practice together on calls like this, where we're surrounded by, energetically surrounded by others who share our love and understanding of truth, of our wholeness, our inherent wholeness. I hope that's useful. I can say in my experience that it's not useful to put a lot of energy into resisting those that resist. It will never bring the peace we seek. In the same way that war will never be a means to peace. Another question. I wonder how you say your name. Siri, I'm so sorry, I don't know. So I won't try, I won't butcher your name anymore, but thank you for writing in. This question is, I have realized that I create a feeling of busyness in my meditation practice through being distracted by my noisy mind and then constantly body scanning and meta phrases, and that I actually have very little trust in the certainty and flow of this moment. Beautiful. Again, I'm sorry that I don't know how to say your name, but don't worry, because no one ever gets mine right either in the beginning. So I don't take it personally. I hope you won't either. But yes, absolutely, absolutely so. What you're talking about is important. You're recognizing that when you put all your attention on trying to do something with the noisy mind, or body scanning, or using meta phrases, then your insistence on focusing on those things is like, it would be like me saying, here's the image I just had. So I'm in the water. I have a story that I can't swim. So I'm splashing all over the place and I'm grasping for everything. I'm grasping for the buoy. I'm grasping for something someone just threw towards me. I'm grasping to grab onto some post that's sticking up. Obviously, I'm making this up on the spot and I don't know if this is working for you, but hang with me. So I'm grasping, I'm grasping. All of that assumes that if I were to release that grasping, I wouldn't float. All of it just assumes that I can't trust that if I simply let go, I will actually rest in my own being. And isn't it the case that the whole reason you've been drawn to the cushion is that you long for that type of resting in who you authentically are? So again, these practices can be terrific practices in terms of concentration, but I suggest that right now might not be the moment to continue with a concentration practice. I've spent years in a Zen Buddhist monastery where my primary focus was concentration in that way, in meditation. It's extremely valuable, but in this moment, I project that you're longing for the experience of resting. So I invite you to do that. I invite you to rest, to trust, to see yourself as being able to float. You say it has been really helpful to feel that trusting, Would you suggest continuing practicing with tuning into this feeling or trust rather than using meditation type techniques? Thank you. I believe I just spoke to that. I feel like I have a great longing for connection and trust in myself. Absolutely. Hallelujah. Amen. That is what draws you right now. That is what you long for. Honor that longing. That is the heart's longing for what is authentically so and what is authentically you. How beautiful that you are coming to the realization that you need not work hard for the experience of who you authentically are. That you can rest into your own experience of being. And that thirst can be quenched through that releasing, not through doing. How beautiful. Thank you. All right, I am aware that we have 1 minute left, and I'm going to read one more question, and then I do have an exciting announcement, so I hope you'll stay tuned with me here. I'm deeply moved by what you were sharing, and I feel the sustenance of love that resting in myself provides. Thank you. That resting in yourself is, Allison, thank you. That resting in yourself is, resting in yourself as yourself is love. It is love. It is loving and it is love. Rupert Spira talks about love as the recognition of our shared being. I love that quote. Is there space in this for movement through grief and growing into challenges. My goodness, yes, indeed. Where else would we want how else would we want to work with grief? Do I want to work with grief through constriction, or do I want to allow grief to rest in this open space of love and beingness? What changes when I allow that? There's much more that I'd like to say to that, and simply because we are at our time, I would like to move on to my announcement, but Allison, I hope you'll join in next time, and perhaps next time I do a call, that could be the topic. It's really rich. Again, thank you all so much for being with me today. And I wanted to tell you about a course that I'm very excited about that'll be offered through Realize Media. Realize Media is, I believe, the sort of sister of Worldwide Insight. And it is the name of the platform that hosts month-long classes, or sometimes even longer, but mine is a month-long class. And if you go to caverlymorgan.org and you look under events, it links you to a page on the Worldwide Insight platform or the Realize Media platform. That page has slashes and dashes, and so I'm not going to list that URL now, but caverlymorgan.org is easy to remember. Go to events, and then you can't register for the course yet, which is going to be December 28th through January 3rd, but you can get on an email list, so you'll be alerted when it's time to register. I wanted to offer this call today partly as a way to plant the seed that you might join us for this month-long course. Again, I'm incredibly excited about it, and thank you so much. Giles just posted the link to the Realize Media page. And so you can get to it either through caverlymorgan.org or through his link there. What I'm excited about is that it's the first time the course is called Bridge to Happiness, and it's the first time I've really mapped out what, in my experience of monastic training, moving into the world, becoming interested in teachers like Ramana Maharshi and bringing a non-dual perspective into my experience of practice. It's a course that bridges all of that, and in a sense it maps out my own history of practice, and I hope will be very, very useful to folks who might not go and spend 8 years at a silent Zen monastery, or might not take the exact path that I've taken, but hopefully can learn and grow from tools that I've formed along the way and that I've been inspired by along the way. Also, just wanted to put in a loving invitation to join us in person, if you'd like, in Portland, Oregon, for our Winter New Year retreat. It is a really, some people actually on this call might have joined the course that Realize Media put forward for the last 2 years called Awakening to the New Year. That course is being offered in person. I've offered this retreat for years, and that course actually through Realize Media arose out of my experience of this retreat. And the retreat every year just deepens and expands and is enriched by its own history and all that people bring to it. So many people that come on that retreat come every year, and I invite you to check out details at caverlymorgan.org. I also will just put in a plug for Peace in Schools. If working with teens and youth lights you up, we have an incredible training program right now, and I invite you to check out peaceinschools.org. We're the first 4-credit semester-long elective mindfulness course in a public high school, and we're now in 7 public high schools in Portland, Oregon. So I just invite you to join in any way that you wish, if that inspires you. Most of all, I just thank you for your practice, for your sincerity. I believe so much that the whole world benefits from our shared practice, from our shared care, and from our shared love. So thank you so much for joining today. And I won't have another worldwide Sunday call before the end of the year, unless someone cancels at the last minute and I'm able to do it. But I do hope to see you in that month-long course, A Bridge to Happiness. Thank you so much.